Welcome back to Low Stress Math with Mrs. Bono. We are still in Chapter 1 and we're doing exponents, and today we're doing a zero exponent. I haven't really touched on this much, but you have seen it the very first day. So let's get back to the zero exponent. And the target is to know what a zero exponent is and what it means in class, in math. So, learn what a zero exponent is/means. So do the warm-up, and you'll probably figure it out for yourself. So I'll give you a second. Pause the video. All right, I'm hoping that you did that warm-up on your own, because it really will show what the zero exponent is. So warm-up, simplify, and then evaluate the following expression, okay? So first you have to simplify, then you have to evaluate, and that's my expression. And two different methods, the quotient rule and expanded form. So let's start with the quotient rule. What is the quotient rule? Well, if I don't remember, I can always go back a page or two. In this case, I have to go all the way back to page 32. And here it is on the bottom of page 32. You're dividing numbers with the same base. So keep the base and subtract the exponents. In other words, top minus bottom. So here, I'm going to follow that quotient rule. I'm going to keep the base 5, and I'm going to subtract the exponents, 3 minus 3. Oh, well, wait a second. That's an identity property, right? 3 minus 3 is 0. So here we go, 5 to the 0 power. All right, grab your calculators, ladies and gents, and put that in. Here we go. 5 to the 0 power. 1? 5 to the 0 power is 1. Okay, I believe you, computer. I believe you. So evaluate it. You get 5 to the 0 power is 1. All right, I am going to do the same thing here in expanded form. 5 times 5 times 5 divided by 5 times 5 times 5. So it's 5 to the 3rd power, which means you use 5 as a factor 3 times. Okay, let's see. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Wait a second. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So 5 to the 3rd divided by 5 to the 3rd is 1. That's right. Anything that you divide by itself is 1. So, the zero property rule of exponents. Any base to the 0 power is 1. So let's write that down. Any base to the 0 power, make my fanciest Nancy's Z for you, is 1. All right, so, but remember about bases. Here we go. We're going to do these 3 problems together, and then I'm going to ask you to try these 3 problems on your own. All right, parentheses, 2 to the 0 power. What's the base? 2. Oh, I did that in the wrong color. The base is 2. And the exponent is 0. And evaluate it, well, 2 to the 0 power, we just figured it out. Anything to the 0 power is 1, so 2 to the 0 power, ba-bam, is 1. Okay, remember, when you have a negative but no parentheses, that is really -1 times 5 to the 0 power. Which means the base here is 5. careful, careful, careful. The exponent is 0. So this is this. -1, get that in there, equals -1, 5 to the 0 power is 1. So -1 times 1, -1 times 1 is -1. So when you have no parenthesis, -1. Down here. Remember, the leading number here, that's a coefficient, and that coefficient is 2. It is not part of the base, which is x. My base is x. Nor is it part of the exponent, 0. My exponent is 0. So this coefficient of 2 is 2 times x to the 0 power. Any base to the 0 power is 1. So x to the 0 power is 1. So if I multiply that, 2 times 1, I get 2. Your turn. Try the independent practice problems on this side. Pause the video, turn it off, do the work. Remember, the only way to learn math is to do math. What the silly quotes in your life, Bono? All right, welcome back. I hope you paused the video and tried those problems. So let's take a look at them now. For this one, the whole thing in the parentheses is the base. So this whole 5 to the 9th is the base. The exponent is 0. And it doesn't matter what's in those parentheses. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So this is 1. Bam. But there's no parentheses, which means this has a coefficient of -1. So -1 times that base 7 with its exponent of 0. So that is going to be what? -1 times 1. -1 times 1. And -1 times 1? -1. So remember, without the parenthesis, -1. With the parenthesis, +1. Down here, coefficient. So, coefficient times base m, my base is m, my exponent is 0. So, I'm really doing 5, oh, you forgot your parentheses, I forgot your equal sign. 5 times 1. Well, 5 times 1 is 5. So, in other words, if you have a coefficient and a base to the 0 power, the coefficient is your answer. And if it's a negative with no parentheses, that coefficient is -1. Be careful. I love this, but it's a little hard. So, on the next page, let's do some problems together. Guided practice. Use the laws of exponents. All of them, product, power, and quotient rule. So, laws of exponents. To simplify and evaluate where possible. Remember that evaluate means solve. Simplify just means you get it down to, one base, one exponent. So this one, g to the 7th times g to the -7th. All right, I'm going to keep my base. Wait, what rule is that? What rule is that? There's a big dot, and a big dot means I'm multiplying. So that means it must be the product rule. So with the product rule, you keep the base, g, and you add the exponents. 7 plus -7. Well, 7 plus -7. The signs are different, so you subtract. 7 minus 7 is 0. Hey, look at that. One base with a 0 exponent, that is going to be equal to 1. Bam, 1. The next one. Ooh, I like this one. What rule is that? I have one base and 2 exponents, so that is going to be the power rule. And what does the power rule say? Well, if you go back and look at it, it says keep the base and multiply the exponents. So I'm going to do 3 times 0. Okay, 3 times 0. 3 times 0 is 0. So I now have y, keep the base, to the 0th power. Y to the 0 power? Bam, 1. There we go. This has a lot of rules. This is using all of my rules that I know, every single one of them. This is using, to start with, the power rule. And then it's going to use the product rule. And then it's going to use the quotient rule. Because remember, I said, when you have a fraction like that, the top of it is kind of like invisible parentheses. So the top of that is parentheses, which means I have to do everything on top first. But on top, I have an exponent with an exponent and a multiplication. So I'm going to do the exponents first. I'm going to keep the m. I'm going to write it over here a little. M, and I'm going to multiply 6 times 0. Do I have to write that now? 6 times 0 is 0. Times m to the 5th power. And that is all over m. Okay, now still I have stuff on top of a fraction, so that's invisible parentheses again. All right, I have the product rule. Keep the base and add the exponents. M, 0 plus 5. What's 0 plus 5? 5. All right, and then m, and I'm going to give that an exponent because it really has that invisible 1. Now I'm going to use the quotient rule. Keep the m, and now 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 is 4. All right, so for all you people who just want to apply rules and not show me what you're doing, that's minimum. That's the very least that you can do to get full credit for that problem. I know that you multiplied 6 times 0 to get 0. I know that you added to get the 5th. I know you subtracted to get the 4th. But you have to show me each step individually like that. And that's it, minimum. Can't do it in your head. I love you guys. I wish you could. I know that you can actually, but I would appreciate it if you would at least show me where you're going, taking the baby steps. All right, independent practice, 4 problems on the bottom. Get done. You can get her done. All right. That means turn off the video and do the problems. Well, I hope you did pause the video and answer the problems, because the only way to learn math is to do math. So I'm going to go over these problems with you. On the top here, again, invisible parentheses. And because I have more room, I'm going to show every single step so you see what I'm doing. So in order to do this, I'm going to use my laws of exponents, the product, the power, and the quotient rule.
At this time, all 7th graders, please move to their 3rd period class.
To simplify and evaluate where possible. It's not always possible. So I have the top, which means I'm going to keep the base c, and this is a multiplication symbol, so I'm going to add the exponents. 0 plus 7. It's still divided by c to the 5th power. Okay. Keep the base c. 0 plus 7 is 7, divided by c to the 5th power. Okay. My next step is I'm going to subtract. Keep the base c, and I'm going to subtract.
At this time, all 8th graders, please move to your 3rd period class.
I'm going to subtract 7 minus 5. Okay, and now 7 minus 5, I get c squared. I can't evaluate that because I have a variable. You cannot evaluate with a variable. So I'm going to keep this base 7, and because it's multiplication, I'm going to use the product rule. 3 plus 0, and 7 to the 3 plus 0, 7 to the 3rd power. And because this is a number, and I own a calculator, I can evaluate this one. 7 to the 3rd power is 7 times 7 times 7. 7 used as a factor 3 times. So I know 7 times 7 is 49, and I'm going to bring down this other 7, and I'm going to do 49 times 7. And you know, I'm grabbing my calculator to do that. 49 times 7 is 343. So I can evaluate that problem because it's numbers. 343. It's hard sometimes to evaluate when all you have is an exponent, when all you have is variables, but you'll see it'll come up where you can actually evaluate some things with variables because you get an exponent of 0. We'll get back to that. Right. Down here, I'm using 2 different rules. I'm using the power rule to multiply exponents, and then I'm going to use the product rule and add my exponents. So keep the base, x, and now I'm going to multiply 2 times 4. Power rule. 1 base, 2 exponents. And that's still going to be times x to the negative 8th. So I'll do that one first. 2 times 4 is 8. So I get x to the 8th power times x to the negative 8th power. Oh, that's interesting. So now I'm using the product rule because it's multiplication to add the exponents. X, and I'm adding 8 plus negative 8. 8 plus negative 8 is 0. So I have x to the 0th, I made up a word there, to the 0 power. And anything to the 0 power is 1. So I started out only variables, and I ended up with a numerical answer. I was able to evaluate that because after I worked with all of those exponents, it came down to x to the 0 power, which is 1. Okay, here is the problem. Oof. First, there's those invisible parentheses on the top. So I have to do that part first. And that has the big dot of multiplication, so I know that it's going to start with the product rule. And because it's written like a fraction, it's going to also include the quotient rule. Luckily, that's it. That's all I have to do. So these are monomials, remember? There's a coefficient, a base, and an exponent. Coefficient, base, exponent, coefficient, base, exponent. Monomials. So I am going to use the laws of exponents to simplify to one single monomial. All right, I start by multiplying the numbers on top, the coefficients. Negative 4 times 2. all right? Then I'm going to keep the base r, and I'm going to add the exponents 0 plus 2. And I'm not going to do anything to the bottom, 8r. Okay, negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. 0 plus 2 is 2. So I get r squared over 8r to the first power. But I just saw something. This looks like 8 divided by 8, but it's really negative 8 divided by 8. And negative 8 divided by 8 is negative 1. So my coefficient here is going to be negative 1. But I still have to keep the base and subtract the exponents, 2 minus 1. I wrote that in the wrong color, 2 minus 1. Here we go. So let's fix this. 2 minus 1 is 1. So this ends up looking like negative 1 r to the first power. R to the first power. And that, my friends, is an ugly looking piece of math. I don't need the negative 1. I could just write negative r, because that's really the same as negative 1 times r, negative r. And I have the exponent 1, and you don't have to write the exponent when it's 1. So this is actually my simplified version. I don't have to write the 1s, but I do have to keep the negative sign and the base. All right, take care. I will talk to you soon.